Alligators, like other animals, reproduce. Animals have three goals in life. One, find food, something to eat, keep you alive. Two, avoid the predators. There are predators out there that would eat you. And three, find your mate and reproduce. That's the three most important things in their lives. In alligators, it's the same way. Male gators begin their courtship with a declaration of their territory. And they do that by roaring. They tell everybody about it. This is my place. If you can hear me, you're in the wrong place. And they do fight over their territories. Big gators do even kill and eat smaller gators. Mating usually occurs in April and May, maybe as late as June. But usually April and May is the mating period. They are active in their courtship. Females take part in it. They have Musk glands, two right here, under the lower jaw, right here at the angle of the mandible. At the angle of the mandible, there's one right here and another one right over there. And that's in a significant place because they do rub it, they crawl over each other. The big gators and the small, as they crawl over, and as they mouth each other. They do that in order to make the glands extrude. And back here is between the back legs, there's an opening into a cavity that it's the opening for the digestive, the reproductive, and the urinary tract. All three come out the cloaca. Cloaca is a cavity, not a structure. It is a structure in a way that it's a cavity. But all three of those systems carry out their functions right there. And on either side, right and left, are another set of Musk glands. Females have both, and males have both. So they're constantly stimulating each other by their manipulations, by their crawling around, and they actually push each other under the water, and eventually they reach a point of copulation. The male gator actually has a penis inside the cloaca, and you can feel it. If you finger the cloaca, it's very obvious that that's a male. Externally, there are very few, if any, definite declarations of sex. After you've looked at them for a number of years, you get some ideas, particularly with their behavior. Tells us if they're a male or a female. Then they actually copulate in the water, underwater, and it's not a blam blam. Thank you, ma'am. It's a slow and easy, and they're underwater, and occasionally you'll see the tip of a tail will come out of the water. Maybe you'll see a leg will appear on the surface of the water, and it's almost like a slow dance underwater. And then they separate, and they may or may not see each other again for a long time. She then will fertilize those eggs. She then will fertilize the eggs that she's carrying, and in late April, early May, she will begin nest building. Nest building consists of gathering peat, gathering live plants, anything that's movable, she'll pile it up. And it will be a nest will be anywhere from 5 feet to 8 feet wide and about 3 feet to 3.5 feet high. It has to be above the high water line because if those eggs get submerged, they will drown. So because they breathe through their shell. Okay. Incubation. She will get, and once she's piled up her debris and she's satisfied with it, it's usually very near the water so she can splash water onto it. If not, she will urinate on it to maintain the moisture content. Not the odor, but the moisture content. Because only a moist nest is actively decaying. And in that decay process, it gives off heat. And that heat is what incubates the eggs. That may take 6, 8, 10 weeks. It happened here in the park one time. It's the only time it's ever happened since the park opened back in the late 40s. They've had gators in captivity, but they haven't always had them in the correct environment. The environment must have deep enough water that they can mate in that water. Otherwise, it just won't happen. She lays her eggs. She'll dig a hole in the top of her nest, and she'll sit on top of it and drop her eggs into it. It might resemble something like this. This is a very primitive model of a gator nest. These eggs are about the same size as a gator egg. In nature, they will be muddy, they'll be wet, they'll have debris all over them because that's what's incubating the eggs. Then at about middle to late June, at the latest, early July, they will begin to. You begin to hear. There may be as many as 60 eggs in a nest. Usually 25 to 30, maybe 35. Well, this nest that we had here contained 37 eggs. None of them were fertile. None of them developed into baby gators. It was a total failure, and we invited a man who raises gators for his living. His name is David Evans, over in Cogdale. There's a gator farm. He makes it his business to know about how to incubate and how to develop young gators. So he came and he analyzed the nest and told us that probably, since it was her first laying, that's why the eggs did not hatch. Some of them were deformed. I didn't bring those. I have some of those. Some of them were deformed. They never separated. It was like 2 or 3 or 4 eggs in a row hooked together like beads on a string. Anyhow, nothing was fertilized, nothing developed, and we waited like 85 to 90 days before we opened the nest. She offered no defense of the nest. She seemed to know that there was something wrong going on in there. But as we opened the nest and counted the eggs, and Dr. Evans said that it was probably because it was her first laying, and hopefully this year, that was last year, hopefully this year she'll do that again, and maybe we'll have success in raising some baby gators. When they hatch from a nest, they're about this big, almost that big. That's a little bit too big, but you see they do have teeth. Even at this hatching age, they do have teeth. Also, their size makes them an ideal snack for many, many, many animals. Hawks, owls, egrets, otters, possums, raccoons, mostly black bears. Black bears are often accused of developing, or black bears of cannibalizing gator nests. During that first year, they are highly colored. They have lots of red and lots of yellow stripes and markings on them. None of my models show that correctly. In about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, this little gator will develop into this, if he lives that long. Big fish, bigger gators, big gators eat little gators. That's just the way it is out there. And that would happen. That would happen. For those that do survive, and part of their life, they might hitch a ride on mama's back. And this is a rubber model of a mom gator with 3 or 4 little tiny gators on her back. And this really happens out there. When they hatch, she will come and dig away the top of the nest, and they will crawl up, out, and make themselves seen. She then will pick them up in her mouth. She'll pick them up and take them down and put them in the water. There for a few days or a few weeks, it's just one great big party. And gradually, as predation takes over, they begin to decrease. The population will begin to decrease, and there might be 2 or 3, at the most, 5% survival. At the most, 5% survival. So, if you add man's interference with their life cycle, there might not be any. When this part of the country was first settled, and the big river over there in Jacksonville, I forget the name of that. The early settlers and scientists that came here said you could walk across the river on the back of gators. There were literally millions of them. Now there's probably 1 million in the whole state of Florida. In Georgia, maybe as many as 50,000, maybe 100,000. In the swamp, maybe as many as 10 or 12,000. But they are very important to the system. Their predation helps keep populations strong. As I mentioned earlier, they catch the weak, the slow, the young, the injured. Anything, if he's not careful in watching what he's doing and watching his environment, he'll end up in the food chain.